Happy New Year, friend. I'm sitting in the back of my Jeep, looking out over the Mojave Desert. I'm waiting for a windstorm to pass before going out and exploring the homeland of the Mojaves. And I'm contemplating the renewal of the year. This day of New Year, which through most of human history has actually been celebrated as the winter solstice, the renewal of the sun. And at this time of renewal, I'm thinking of you and all the ones I love. This is a very contemplative time of year for me. My father, who lived a long and healthy and wonderful life, passed away a couple of years ago, but his birthday is around this time. Also, I gave birth to my first son around this time of year, around the winter solstice. And also my beloved sister, who passed away at a very young age, she died around the winter solstice. It seems like that's a kind of time of year where people do make their transition. And it makes us stop and think. So it makes us think about life and the possibilities and how we can live better. And in that spirit, I offer you a story of birth, as told by a Mojave, Herman Gray, in a book he created called Tales from the Mojaves. It's the story of birth of a new son as in child. And I have a special appreciation for this book because it was given to me by a friend that I met through the Ancient Southwest Facebook group. He sent me his library of books as a gift, as a expression of goodwill, because he knew I would appreciate it. It was his library of books about the Mojave Desert, and it really touched my heart that this person, who was essentially a stranger to me, saw something in the project that I'm doing here and made a gift to me of his library. And so this story is also dedicated to my friend Bill, who sent me these books. I'm so grateful. So I offer you this little story. Sit back and relax and understand about the Mojave that it's their tradition to live from the heart, to learn from the heart and from dreaming more than from the head. The Mojave's traditional way is to live in a kind of liminal space of meditation in life and learn from intuition and from feeling and from dream and from perception that comes from a realm that isn't the physical. Of course, things can be learned physically, but that's not the primary mode through which life is lived amongst the Mojave. And so this is a story of the birth of a child and how that child grows into a man and will live his life through that space. I hope you enjoy this. It's very peaceful and relaxing, so I hope this brings you some joy. The story is called Swift Lance. The winter had been long and hard, but now the sun sent a little more heat with its increased rays. The sharp breeze that came in from the river lost some of its stinging bite. The north mountain faces were less cold, almost smiling. A new world with its tiny green buds was pushing its way into spring. Hear, all people, hear the good news. A Mojave is born this day. Every dwelling sent forth people to learn of the great event. Falling Leaves presents a man-child this day to Long Lance. The people gathered about the dwelling of Long Lance to share in the presentation. From the hands of Falling Leaves, Long Lance accepted his son. His strong fingers pressed firmly around the tiny chest, thrilling to the beating of the vigorous young heart. He held the boy facing the east and, addressing the source of all life, spoke his prayer. Mighty sun, giver of life, as thou dost rise from the east, wilt thou pause in thine upward way to look upon our home this day, giving him promise of a good and useful life? To the north Long Lance turned, still holding the boy aloft. North winds, source of all swiftness, wilt thou pause in the blowing to breathe fleetness into the body of my son this day, that he may go his way with light feet, reaching far places with thine own ease. Turning to the west, he continued, High clouds of the west, givers of wisdom, favor my son this day and throughout all his days, that he may know the way he should travel, and walk straight in the paths that lead to his greater self. To the south he spoke, Home of the storms, giver of strength, teach my son to bend before the wild force of the winds, to pause and gather his forces for what lies ahead. When it is time to walk before thy fury, go on his way in calm certainty, when thy turbulence shall subside. Thus was the son of Long Lance welcomed into the life of the village, and so was he prepared to begin his earth life. No name was given. A nickname would serve his first year, then he would be given a name to use until he earned one for himself. His first 10 years would be free of all restraint. He would roam the desert, swim the river, fish as the whims of youth might lead his group of playmates, without chores to be done or a time schedule to be met. Carefree as the animals that grew with them, the boys would learn to be at home wherever they found themselves, to make do with what nature provided, to choose friends. So the son of Long Lance grew straight as an arrow, swift as the wind. He listened carefully when Long Lance told him the legends of their people, stories of ghosts and battles, tales of nature and of other tribes. Together they sang songs of the Mojaves, the songs of the bird, the bear, the turtle, and the river, and the songs of war. Then one morning Long Lance led his son into the hills, carrying a single water gourd. His days of play were over. The time had come for his first lesson in obedience. My son, you will stay in these hills alone for the next 3 days. So long as your gourd supplies you, you may drink water. But for 3 days and 3 nights, no food shall pass your lips. You will observe the animals and the growing things about you, and think of the generosity of the Great Father, who watches over all and gives us what we must have to maintain life. When you return to your people, you will have chosen a name by which you will be known henceforth forever. Then shall your training begin, that you may earn the right to wear that name proudly. Then the boy was alone with nature and her children. He lay for a time watching a colony of ants moving through the grasses, and he wondered that such tiny beings should be so knowing as they went about their work. He swallowed a mouthful of his precious water and turned on his back to see a flock of birds flying in a pattern against the sky. He slept, and when he awoke, the first sunset fires were coloring the west. One last bird crossed the brilliance like a lance thrown swiftly by a strong arm. He smiled, settled more comfortably against the ground, and waited for the night to come. The second day was filled with many things. He was restless and eager to find the message the Great Father had written on the face of the earth for him to read. Every tree that rose above him, every leaf that brushed his cheek, every stirring thing whispered to him, but strain as he would, his ear could not catch their meaning. When he returned to his resting place, it was again the time of sunset. He tipped the gourd, and as the last swallow of water trickled down his throat, he smiled. Again that late bird made its swift and lance-like flight across the coral and gold of the sun's departure. That night his dreams were laced together by the flight of a bird across a vivid sky, and when his eyes opened to behold a bird watching him thoughtfully from a nearby branch, he could think of nothing else. Surely this bird was the omen. The hunger pangs of his empty belly were as nothing. The dryness of his throat was a blessing if it brought him wisdom to understand what he saw. When Long Lance came for his son, he found the boy sitting cross-legged, his back against a tree, gazing upward at a branch where the bird no longer sat. "Have you found your name, my son?" The boy stood tall, his eyes were bright. "I am Swift-Lance, son of Long Lance, whose father was Fire-Lance, the warrior. In the quiet of this lonely spot I have learned many things. Now let us return to our dwelling, that I may listen to your teachings and become a man among men in the footsteps of my father." Then did Longlegs rest his arm about the shoulders of his son in quiet pride as he spoke. All that I have learned from the elders will I share with you, my son. You will learn all that I know, and more, for you must go further than I. We will hunt first, track the desert creatures to their lairs. You will practice the fighting ways with your friends under the guidance of our bravest warriors. And when you are well trained, you will go with the braves into battle. The secrets of planting and growing things, the best ways of harvesting the food crops and storing them for the long, cold winter, the knowledge of herbs and the making of medicines, all these a man must know to provide for and protect his family. Swift Lance will go far, but for now it is enough that we return to our dwelling and partake of the food your mother has prepared with a prayer in her heart for your well-being." So it was that a boy was born and nurtured and found his name and lived to make Swift Lance a hero to his people, the Mojaves. I wish you a prosperous, healthy, happy, loving year to come. And I wish for you a quiet time where you can sit and remember that you are a person who is always learning and always growing and always in the process of becoming. And that it will inspire you to become the hero of your own life. And know that you're supported by nature and by people like us here in the ancient Southwest community, that you're supported, and we're wishing you well and wishing you the most beautiful life this new year can bring. May the fire inside you continue to burn brightly. Happy New Year.